Welcome to the Courage and Cannabis Show, where we bring you insightful conversations with the authors of the number one best-selling books, Courage and Cannabis. I'm your host, Candy Flores, and today we're diving into the pages of Courage and Cannabis, Volume 1 and 2, with one of the best-selling authors and her Mary Jane from Ohio, and her chapter on being Mary Jane, 50 years of an amazing little plant. But before we embark on this literary journey, a quick shout out to our sponsors of the book series who help make this podcast possible. Compass Naturals, Endovibe Cannabis Centers, Spender, The Cannamom Show, Blev 614 Network, Cannabis BPO, Columbus Botanical Depot, Daga Digital Marketing, Hempbox, etc., Ohio Medical Marijuana Physicians Association, DustinCava.com, Web Development. Remember, the Courage in Cannabis book series is a project of the Growth, Harmony, and Happiness Community Foundation 501c3 nonprofit. Let's bring Mary Jane up. Hi, Mary Jane.
Hello.
Glad to have you on here. How are you
Good.
today?
I'm pleased to be here. I'm great.
Great to have you. Now let's get started. Your chapter on being Mary Jane, 50 years of an amazing little plant. Tell us a little bit about your chapter.
Well, basically, it's kind of a short bio. Someday I'll write the longer version, but this is like the Cliff Notes version, if you want to call it that. Um, so it just kind of outlines my journey through my first encounters with cannabis, through to I think I had cancer in 2020, and this was written probably about 2021. So it's going to be kind of not encompassing some of the things that have happened post 2021, but so inevitably it's just a little snippets of me.
Nice, nice. What inspired you to write about this topic once you started writing?
Well, Dr. Bridget came to me. Oh, I don't know. It's probably pre-pandemic because I got to know her because I wrote a few things about her about the her practice, Green Harvest Health,
Hmm.
in the Columbus Free Press. I'm a long-term writer for the Free Press, and so I wrote a couple little things, snippets, probably maybe even a whole article about her, included her in it. And I stopped by and see her periodically. She liked my drawings and pictures, so she hung a few on the wall. And I don't know. I guess it's probably around 2020. I guess she came, look, might you be interested? Sure. I'm a writer. Sure, I'll do that. And I think that's kind of how the whole thing began. It's been an interesting journey since then.
Yes, it is. It has been. What are some of the most surprising discoveries or insights you encountered during the writing process?
I'm an pretty experienced writer, so I've written. Oh, I've 100. I think I'm on my 110th article for the Columbus Free Press, to give you an example. Of
Wow.
write my background in writing articles, so I'm in very much a comfort zone when I do that. Um, I don't know that I had any great epiphanies during the writing of it. I think it was kind of for me. Um, a lot of people might say it was interesting that I came out and talked a lot about myself, because most of the time when I was doing the work I've been doing the last, say, let's say 10 years, I'm talking about other
Hmm.
people because I'm trying to advance the ballot issue. But this time, 10 years ago, we were all about getting our ballot issue, our initiative we'd written, onto the Ohio ballot. And so everything we do is talk about the implications of that. So being writing about who I am, what my experiences, maybe chart a little bit of new territory for me.
I see, I see. So, how do you see courage and cannabis contributing to the broader conversation surrounding cannabis culture and its legalization?
My still a bit about me, okay, because I have been doing this for, I always like to say, 20 to 40 years, depending upon how you count them, in terms of how I've been involved with the cannabis movement. And that kind of encompasses, I guess, the writing of the article because it started when it really began, which was, when I grew up in Wheeling, West Virginia,
Hmm.
and I kind of started from that point. My father was an engineer in the steel industry, and so I went off to college in 2000, 2000, not that old, in 1970s. And so what that means is that from that point on, you're a college student. That's probably the first time you'll come in contact, at least for me, I'm old school, come in contact with
Hmm.
marijuana. And so that be from that point onward. So then when I say I'm old school, I mean, I go back literally 50 years. And I think it's interesting because I don't know what point others get involved with this. There's what they call us OGs or something. I think that mean that
Yes.
really. I should get a little button on my lapel here
Yes,
and
you
say, "Hey,
should.
I
Yes.
am an OG. I got my little button."
That's
But
right.
I think I got the cred, man. And so yeah, you go back to a different time when cannabis was so illegal, and people were so concerned. I mean, and legitimately so concerned about being busted. I mean, you took it for example, dear John Sinclair, who was kind of iconic in Michigan,
Hmm.
was busted in 1969 for 2 joints, and he was he was given a 10-year sentence, prison sentence, and spent 2 years in prison for 2 joints. Think about that. And this is the kind of things that were right at the fore. If you were in marijuana, you had to figure out how you could kind of hide it and do it on the clandestine because you were afraid the cops were going to bust you into you any time, and you'd be John Sinclair. You'd be in prison for 2 years.
Right.
So you come from that point. You
Hmm.
come and then you go through the journey from through you go through okay, the 1970s with the Controlled Substances Act, and things started getting worse and worse. 1980s, you had, Just Say No, Ronald Reagan. And that's when a lot of these laws got written in terms of, mandatory minimum sentencing. And then you go into the 90s, 1990s, and it was, getting worse there. But there was starting to be a movement built, probably about the
Hmm.
mid 90s. I mean, an organized movement of people. NORML has been around, National Organization for Reform Marijuana Laws, has been
Right.
around since 1970 with the passage of Controlled Substances Act. I think Keith Stroop founded that group just about the day after. But nonetheless, things seemed to get worse and worse and worse as you were going through the um, the 80s and then into the 90s. There were some more draconian things, but people were getting organized, and that's when you had like the first ballot issue in Ohio, which was written by Bob Petrakis and my friend Kenny Schwickert, who are all part of the Columbus Free Press, which with whom I've worked for the last 20 years. So I didn't come along quite as much as when they did. But
Wow.
I think as you start to see the movement started to build, about the time I intercepted was 2000. That's when I kind of had my millennial epiphany going, well, what am I going to do with the rest of my life now that my son's in high school?
Hmm.
Because he didn't need a stay-at-home mom anymore, like that company. What am I going
Hmm.
to do? So I thought, well, I think I could become a lawyer. Even at my age, I could become a lawyer.
Hmm.
I really thought about that. I think I'd go back to law school. Well, I didn't. I decided instead to work full time virtually on legalizing marijuana and medical marijuana in the state of Ohio. That was kind of a goal of mine in my head. Okay, and I've done a number of things. And the first, I almost have to just dissect my life since I had my epiphany
Hmm.
between the times that I was working on the national level, and I've worked, I mean, for international level, I was working with all these people from California. Um, I had colleagues who were in Canada, colleagues who were in Europe, et cetera, et cetera. And so I had this period of time when I was working on the international level. And then about the beginning of the 2010s, I decided to come back. Come back. I didn't really move from my house. I just changed my focus. Come
Hmm.
back to Ohio and work on ballot initiatives. And we launched the Ohio Cannabis Rights Amendment as a ballot issue in 2013, and it was groundbreaking. And as I said earlier, if I flash back 10 years, I would have just have been a busy little bee. I was doing tons of media, people coming through. I did a sit down, 60-minute style interview to launch the High Cannabis Rights Amendment. I was the newsmaker of the week because of
Wow, that's
for
amazing.
Channel 4 in Columbus. These kinds of things that we were doing to advance this ballot issue. And so that was the journey there. But unfortunately, we didn't have $20 million. Sorry. you know that's what it takes to run a ballot issue. Essentially, if you're going to run a ballot issue, you have $20
Yeah,
million, and we
that's
didn't
right.
have that. So of course, along comes the group that has $20 million. They get on the ballot and they lose because they had a really goofy way of looking at their initiative, the way it was written.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so uh, over time, by 2016, thanks to our lobbying, the groups I was working for lobbying intensively, we passed HB 523, which created a medical marijuana program in Ohio. And then just this last November, we passed what's called Issue 2, which was a recreational adult use marijuana in Ohio. So we've got both medical now and adult use. And to me, it's like that's the culmination of my career.
Hmm.
It's like, well, do I get to retire now? It's been 50 years since I started doing this. Well,
Wow.
no, I
So
think
you
they,
are
I
a
get,
true OG, and we there's so many of us that need to thank you for that, whether we're in Ohio or
oh,
not. That's
well,
awesome. Thank you for all
yeah,
you
thank
do.
you. Thank you. I like kind of the accolades that go, I guess that was worth it.
Yes, definitely. That's amazing. What things are you working on outside of the book? I know you write for the press, and tell us a little bit about your art.
Well, I went to college being to be an art major. I didn't know what else I wanted to do, and unfortunately, you just really can't make any money. I remember trying really hard after I graduated to get got as illustrators or printers and stuff like that, and it just didn't seem to work out for me. So I decided that I was the only way I was going to get employed
Mhm.
was to get an MBA, which I did. So I have an MBA from the University of Dayton. And after that, after I got my MBA, that was 1981.
Mhm.
Um, I answered a blind ad in the paper. Okay, I had my MBA was in finance, and it was for market analyst. I thought, yeah, that's close enough, right? So
Mhm.
I took the job, and it was for the largest U.S. marketer of cancer chemotherapy agents. Um, I, I I just landed there because I wanted a job. B, I had an MBA, and C, it was close enough to being a financial analyst that I was thought I was going to be able to make it. I landed myself, and you can, when you if you get to be really old like me, you begin to see how different things in your life that you go through influence what you end doing at the end of the day, at the end of at the very end. I'm not sure, calling me hopefully not to quite to the very end yet, but nonetheless, all these things that you thought were really crazy that you did maybe in your youth, maybe they come back and haunt you. But I'd say more importantly, they're piece of knowledge that you gain from that you use further in life. Okay, and I
Mhm.
think I could have landed, I don't think, in a better place than the pharmaceutical industry and the cancer chemotherapy agents because, um, this came back to me. We could talk about this in a minute
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
to another part of my life. But in this particular period of time, it was doing marketing, sales analyses, regression analyses, forecasts for all these different cancer chemotherapy agents. So I got to be very, very familiar with all these things that go into treating cancer. That was my
Mhm.
job. And so um, when I left, and the company was called Adria Laboratories, and it was by suburb here called Dublin. But like I say,
Mhm.
largest U.S. market of cancer chemotherapy agents finally got bought up by another company and moved down to Columbus. And so when I left Adria, my last day there, I looked back over my shoulder and says, I will never take those drugs. And I meant it. Okay.
Mhm.
So if I continue, I'll just continue to dovetail with the story unless you have another question for me.
No, no, tell us more because
Okay.
I do have another question, but it kind of is going in together with it. So I want to hear a
Okay.
little bit more about.
Well, in 2000, this is part of when I met Dr. Bridget too. Dr. Bridget kind of factors into this. Um, 2000, only
Mhm.
me would get breast cancer in the middle of a pandemic. Only me. No.
Wow. So that happened
So,
during the pandemic?
yes, it did. Yes, it did. No,
Wow.
everybody else got COVID. I got breast cancer.
Oh.
And unfortunately, it's like was the most aggressive. It's called a with the top of my head here, the type of cancer, triple negative breast cancer, which is the worst kind of breast cancer you can have
Mhm.
because it doesn't have these receptors so that it can react to the chemicals that kind of treat other kinds of cancer. Oh,
Mhm.
the HER2, HAR positive, and then what's the other one? There's another kind too. But anyway, that my unfortunate kind was the worst that you can have. And I said to myself, I promised myself, I will never take the chemotherapy. And what was the first thing that I get offered? I go into one of these, went to the office of one kind of doctor, and she just starts just there, and she says, "Well, we're going to do Adriamycin, we're going to do Fluorescer, we're going to do this, we're going to do that." I said, "Let me stop you there. I know exactly what you're talking about here. I know these
Right.
drugs soup to nuts. I'm not touching them." And I could tell, she could tell by the way I was talking to her because I really knew what I was talking about. I wasn't a rookie on this planet, you know.
Right.
I knew what I was talking about, and so
Mhm.
I didn't do it. And so I did have a lumpectomy,
Mhm.
and this was sad. It was diagnosed in September, and that was when I made my commitment not to do the chemo. I asked Dr. Bridget if she could help me because this is very early in the medical marijuana program in Ohio,
Right.
and
Mhm.
I didn't know who else I could turn to kind of be my Sherpa in a medical sort of way. And here's Dr. Bridget's obviously a medical doctor, and so I said, "Here's what I'm going to do, and I need your help to kind of navigate because again, like I say, it was brand new to Ohio." And I was
Mhm.
trying to find what's called Rick Simpson oil. It's just a name for uh, a very high potency, mostly THC oil. It's an oil extracted oil, and if and my listeners want to know more, just Google Rick Simpson oil, and you can learn about Rick Simpson. This is not something that you can buy from him, but he can tell you his story as to how he made this particular, I think, very effective medicine.
Oh, yes, definitely.
And so, yeah, so I we shopped the dispensaries, and I finally found one that I thought more or less worked. And
Mhm.
I started taking it at the beginning of October, 3 times a day. Now I know what the Rick Simpson protocol is. There's no way I could meet that much cannabis because I just couldn't find it. And I wanted to make sure that I did this through the program so that I could
Mhm.
sit here and talk to you today about it. Because if I had gotten it on the clandestine, if I had gotten it a year or two earlier because it was still illegal in Ohio,
Mhm.
I couldn't have done this. But I think that's kind of the interesting reason reason for being reason to if I could pronounce that with my French correctly, reason for being because I had background in cancer chemotherapy. I had the background in cannabis. I know cannabis as much as I knew the cancer chemotherapy. I could work on this journey and I know exactly what I'm doing and exactly the outcome I wanted. And
Mhm.
so then I had the lumpectomy at the end of October. I have been on the RSO, I'd say, just about that month, as I told you. So I go in for lumpectomy. They take the thing out. Oh, it's okay. So I really did have it. And they say in the chart, my chart reads that there was no cancer found in the margins, which basically means that it was gone. And so, I mean, they would seem to be really amazed, well, and like it's recorded in that, and they also recorded in that, they recorded in your, the, the report that the doctors have.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, in
you
your
know what I'm
chart.
talking about.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
it was put in there that she takes cannabis, injects cannabis 3 times a day. Now we know cannabis is not injectable. I think hopefully most of the people in our group know that you don't inject marijuana, don't inject cannabis
Right.
oil. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it.
Right.
Because what they meant by though is that the way it's on the little syringe that you get
The
with the
syringe,
RSO, it
yes.
comes in a syringe, like they call it a syringe. And that was a
Yes.
misunderstanding on their part. I thought that was
Yes, absolutely, how the story changes, huh?
yeah. So anyway, here I am today. I'm on I'm going on my
That is
3 years
amazing.
out. Yeah, 2000. No, 4 years. Really, I guess that was 2000. 4 years out. Can you imagine that? Time must have been having
Wow.
fun. Time is flying. And so
That is amazing.
I guess I'm healthy.
Yes, absolutely. So, would you recommend the RSO for other patients that are listening that are suffering from similar situations?
I absolutely recommend it, but see, they're a little bit different than what I am. I knew
Mhm.
exactly what I was doing. I knew
Right.
the chemotherapy that they were trying to offer me.
Mhm.
I don't say I would be hard pressed to say I knew it as well as nurses or the doctors. That would be really out of place for me. But I knew it
Right.
so intrinsically that I
Mhm.
could make those decisions knowing full well what I was doing. Now, someone who doesn't want to take the chemo, I understand. I would strongly suggest that you have a sympathetic doctor that you work with, like I did, and because you are, after all, treating cancer. Um, so I
Mhm.
would recommend that. And I think now more so than when I was starting out with this, I think even now more so, cooler more so than it was 10, 15 years ago, there are doctors out there who are practicing cannabinoid medicine, and that's what you
Mhm.
need to work with if you're going to use the RSO to treat your cancer, in my opinion.
Right. Amazing. And doctors like Dr. Bridget would be able to help with that. Be
I
great.
saw where she's offering consultations for cancer. I thought it would say, "I was her first patient. I was her first patient."
Yes, that's amazing.
Maybe I
My
was.
story's a
She
little
may have done
different
this
from
before me. I don't
yours.
know, but no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that she's going to be very busy, and I think that we need more doctors who are as
Oh,
enlightened as she
yes.
is.
Yes, definitely. I know I always tell her we need to clone you
She's not already
so
cloned.
we can have doctors like her all over.
How does she accomplish
In the
all this?
process, no. Yes, definitely. I can only imagine her schedule is just amazing how she takes care of everything and still, is striving for more and helping so many people at the same time. And it takes a village, and luckily we have built this community with all of our authors, and to continue to build each other up. I know my story is different from yours, but I myself used the RSO when I started, and but I not like you, I didn't know anything about it. I was at the last stages, and I thought to myself, you know what
What stage of
I don't have
cancer?
anything to I don't have anything to lose. No, so I had some different issues, and they messed up in my surgery. So I
Hmm.
had some complications and MRSA and septic, and so surgery after surgery. So yeah, I
Oh,
totally
jeez.
understand. The RSO was, I mean, just amazing how I was able to
Hmm.
get up and start walking. And, I was basically on oral chemo, like the oncologist said. And it just, he said, you continue doing what you're doing. And so
And
I,
that's the
I
thing I wanted to
strongly
emphasize too.
believe.
It wasn't just the RSO cured. Let's use the word that cured cancer.
Right.
Let's use the
Hmm.
word. But all of a sudden, because I have a lot of, like everybody, so I have a lot of things wrong with me. So I have a genetic
Hmm.
bone condition,
Hmm.
and I was having trouble walking because I have a permanent dislocated left ankle, permanently dislocated right knee, and so couldn't walk from here to the living room.
Hmm.
Well, now I can walk any place I want. You
Oh, I
know,
just love it. Yes. I love it.
and there's a number of other things. My teeth, I have no good mom, no cavities. You know.
That is amazing. Yeah. I always see the plant as kind of like a vitamin, we're,
Hmm.
because we could benefit from it in other ways as well, after we're healed and doing better. It's amazing. I love hearing those stories, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. And for our listeners, if they have any questions, how can they reach out to you? How can they? Are you on social media, Facebook, Instagram?
I'm on all of the above. LinkedIn too. I don't do a lot with Instagram. I've never quite figured out Instagram, so somebody's going to have to be my Instagram coach. Um,
Okay, yeah, we can help
Facebook,
you
I'm
with that.
obviously on that, and I use my real name. Okay, let's establish this.
Yes.
My real name, my birth name is Mary Jane. My dad gave it to me because it's a familial name from when he grew up in Cincinnati. There were a whole bunch of people in Cincinnati that he knew were named Mary Jane, so I got the name of Mary Jane. And back then, I think my parents thought there were just some cute little shoes here. There's a little chocolate candies. This can't go wrong, right? Well, I don't think they. I'm sure my parents. In the context today, they're both past deceased now, but in the context of the day, if they understood clearly where this movement has gone and how my name is been here so many times, they would be shocked. They would never have made me that. They were very conservative people, real Christian people, and there's no way I got named for marijuana. But I ended up with the name, and because it was important to my dad, I'm never going to change it. And I did change my last name. I got married, but
What
I'm
was
not
your maiden name?
Jones. It's even worse, Mary Jane Jones. It's like I'm glad I took on the board. That the Jones part would probably drive me crazy.
Well, as we wrap up, what message or takeaway do you hope readers will gain from Courage and Cannabis and all the amazing stories?
I like to think that we're on a journey here to I want to call it a journey. Let me call it sound. Let's call it a journey of enlightenment, because when we started out this, as I said, John Sinclair went to jail for 2 years for two joints, and
Mhm,
here we are in 2018, where you can buy that marijuana. And in Ohio here, um, once they get the program up and running, the program's still not quite up, but you can buy 2.5 ounces from a dispensary
mhm.
anytime you want. You know, and so I think that it's a part of a journey to go from being so illegal that you're in jail for so long, and there are still
Mhm.
people who are in jail. They need to get those people out, to now when it's really let's treat it for what it is. It's a plant. It's a very important plant. It's a medicinal plant, but it is a plant.
That's right.
And so all this money, all this time, and all the horror stories, all the suffering, and we've got to end that. The war on drugs, it was wrong. It wrongly began because the people, Richard Nixon was racist,
Mhm.
and we've got to get past that. And I think the thing is, what we're doing now, we're doing great. Most of the states are now. What does it say? How many people? Like well over half the nation lives,
Mhm.
number wise, lives in a state that has some form of marijuana, legal marijuana, and it's just going to get better. So I'd like to think that we can end the war on drugs, stop the war on drugs. We don't need this. It is proved counterproductive to the development of first the medical benefits of cannabis, and now we're going to expand. There's plenty of medical benefits for other Schedule One drugs like psilocybin, even LSD, MDMA, etc. We've got to get out of this mindset that the drugs are somehow something to be fought with as in terms of a war. Putting all our energy and all our efforts against it as if it was a war. It is not a war. And
That's
I
right.
think so much can be beneficial for everyone if we begin to realize that.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Mary Jane, for sharing your thoughts and experiences with us today. Before we go, we've already discussed on the where the listeners can follow you, and you
Oh,
mentioned Facebook, right? And
the right, I
LinkedIn.
was going to say that's how I got on my name, because I have my email address is Mary Jane Borden at Gmail. My Facebook is Mary Jane Borden. So I use that as my real name as the ways you can contact me. I
Perfect.
don't have a pseudonym, and Mary Jane is not my
Perfect.
pseudonym.
That is the real thing. She's our OG, Mary Jane Borden. Well, wonderful. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of Courage and Cannabis, the author's stories. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. And stay tuned for more captivating conversations with authors sharing their courage in cannabis. To learn more about Courage and Cannabis, go to courageandcannabis.com and you can purchase the books on Amazon. Until next time, happy reading. Thank you for thank you for joining us today, Mary Jane.
Thank you for having me.
Mhm.